Especially going back to Columbus down.
Why? They were horrible this.
Malibu at the diner.
These leaders of these countries.
Say about the AFC South. So I think
There was something interesting to say about that.
Early, they weren't expected to have that 13-game win streak like they did last year.
This is the gift that God has given me to be able to help.
To the immigrant.
I'm not.
Am I correct?
Why blame? Why you're
I have a question for Carolyn. Carolyn, hold on. I have a question for you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back on the Doug Saravo Show, which is brought to you by our good friends at Unsolicited Role Models, or role models you may not want, but you may just need. You can follow us on all your podcast applications, YouTube and Facebook Live, Saravo Broadcasting, the Doug Saravo Show. We have a first-time guest with us today, and your name is?
Renata Schwartz.
And you are the author of For God's Sake, Put on a Clean Shirt. Jesus is going to change you unless Jesus isn't going to change you unless you want to change. And you can find that book
On Amazon.com. Just Google my name and the book pops up.
Tell us a little bit about the book before I get into some questions.
Okay. I originally was going to write about my deceased husband. He died tragically on a fire call, and I was going to write a book about him. And years kept on, going by. 10 years it's been, March 13th, and it changed from writing about him to writing about my life. And then I used to say the rosary. The rosary is a prayer that Catholics say. They're beads, and you meditate on the rosary. And for some reason, I was drawn to write about the rosary. And I don't know how it changed, but the rosary is what really kept me, put things in perspective, and that we're all going to die. And the rosary, which is meditating on Jesus's life here on earth. And he had the most tragic death of all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And so I felt the need to write about the rosary. And there's 20 chapters in the book. Each chapter is on a decade of the rosary. So, for example, if you go to the Sorrowful Mysteries, the fourth decade of the Sorrowful is carrying your cross. We all have a cross to bear. Some smaller, some bigger. At times I used to tell God, why did you give me this big cross? You trust me with the big cross. It's like, why can't you give somebody else a big cross? And we each get the cross that we could carry. And we somehow live, or sometimes we need help to carry that cross. And I felt the need to write about how God gave us an example through Jesus to live our life here on earth, whether it be a joyful life, a sad life, a life full of tragedy. We all have a different life, and we should live it to the best way we can. So this book, it not only describes my life, but it describes my life in the way I lived it through the life of Jesus and the rosary. And so that's the 20 chapters in the book. Each chapter is different because each decade of the rosary is different. Mm-hmm. One of my favorites is the Luminous, the wedding at Cana, where the Blessed Mother is at a wedding. The Blessed Mother is the mother of Jesus. So for those of you who aren't Catholic, so the Blessed Mother is at a wedding. There's no wine. And back then, in Christ's time, the main drink was wine because they didn't have to put it in the refrigerator. Then, it always stayed well. And then it was better as you kept it. But the Blessed Mother is at a wedding, and there's these big barrels, and they're all empty. And the wedding is everybody's just starting to have a good time. And there's Jesus with his 12, I call them his entourage, the disciples. He had 12 main disciples that he used to hang around with. And they were his best buddies. And they come walking in to this wedding reception. And the Blessed Mother is like, are you kidding me? We have no wine for the guests, and you're bringing 12 more of your friends, and she goes, you better change this. I want all these barrels filled with wine. So that was Jesus's first miracle. He told the waiters to go, I call them waiters, but they were basically people that were, helping at the wedding. He tells them to fill the barrels, these huge barrels, with water. And he changes all the water to wine, and not only any wine, it was the best wine that the guests had. And it's like, if I look at it, when I say that decade of the rosary, if Jesus could change water to wine, he could change me. And I needed change. And that's where it's like, Jesus isn't going to change you unless you want to change.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to change, he's going to leave you alone because he gives us free will. But if you ask Jesus to change you, he will, but in his time, not in our time.
Yeah, it's a journey.
It's a journey. He wants us to experience the journey, and he showed us how to experience it with his life that he lived on this earth. And then eventually we're all going to leave this earth. We're all going to leave. We have no choice. So that's basically what the book is all about.
Yeah, you talk about it in 7 celebration. So what's the mother to do but to tell her son to bring me more wine for the guest? Jesus, being the obedient son, told the waiters to bring more water and fill all the barrels. He miraculously changed all the water into the finest wine. He then told all the waiters to serve the wedding guest. This was Jesus' first miracle. He performed according to the Gospel of John. I believe in miracles because for me, miracles are hope, no matter how difficult life can be. We have another day to start over. We need to celebrate the good days and be grateful for the freedoms that others do not have. So do you feel like God tries to test us and gives us all these obstacles to get stronger or to even have a better relationship with him?
Yeah, he not only tests us, but he wants us to help others, to be there for others as he was there for others. And that's, I think, the whole meaning for us on this earth is to help each other, and we all have a purpose. And I don't want to talk about politics, but I think I need to, because this was a very extraordinary year. And our president-elect, I feel he will go down in history as one of the greatest presidents of all time, because he endured so much. And
yeah, he went through a lot.
And if we need an example, and he didn't give up. And that's, I think God wants us not to give up. And I look at him and I'm like, this man does not need to be doing this at his time. He
doesn't.
Right. He's wealthy.
He's in his almost 80.
And I'm like, why is he doing this? Why?
Like, I would retire and go to the Bahamas or something.
Or he has his own, he has Palm Springs.
He's got Mar-a-Lago.
Right. So why is he doing this? Because I think when we get towards the end of our life, we say, what was our purpose here on this earth? And I think for him to be doing this, almost got killed twice, and who knows how many times wasn't reported, to get up and to say, fight, and to say what's important to the I think he's trying to save America, because the last 4 years were, I just look at it. If we were-
Unbearable.
yes, with everything that they were trying to do. And I think his purpose, God saved him, not once, but twice, because I think he needs to change this country around, because this country was founded in God we trust.
Yes, it was. It's on all the dollar bills.
Yes, on all the dollar bills. And what were they trying to do? They were trying to get rid of God in the schools, in the public buildings, like bringing in Christmas. Even like last Christmas, I looked at the White House and I'm like, this isn't Christmas. This is insanity. Like, and I said, where is our country going? And I think God spared him to bring our country back to what's important, to bring our country back to America that God promised us, and God we trust. And I think that's why Trump was elected, because people see that our country wasn't going in the right direction.
No, even to in the local community, they have tree lightings.
Yeah.
What they call a holiday tree lighting. They
Yeah.
don't say Christmas tree lighting, which doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. Christmas is Christmas. It's about Christ's birth. It's a birthday. So why make it a different holiday? What were they trying to do?
They want to take that away.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the crown of roses. You talk about sorrow, agony, suffering, trauma, burdens, and death. Some things that we all go through in life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why do you think it's a lot difficult for others compared to maybe me or you? Do you think maybe it's the lack of a relationship with God? Or do you think it's just the way how we're built?
What do you mean more difficult? Like what? Going through
Like,
trauma or
like, let's say someone can't get a job or something. For some people, that may bring them down where they have no motivation. Why do others like find motivation to get out and look for a job compared to someone that may just give up?
Well, I think there also is a physical. Our human being, all of us are combined with an emotional aspect, a physical. We have to take care of ourselves physically, spiritually, mentally. So some of us lack in different parts, like some lack in physically. They might not be able to, whatever the physical, they might not have a leg, or they might not have an arm, or they might, not be able to move around as fast because of arthritis or so that's the physical aspect. Then there's the mental. Some of us are born with mental disabilities, or we might have depression, anxieties, all kinds of mental illness. Then there's the emotional aspect of us, where some, work better under stress. Like, I know if someone tells me someone's coming to my house, I could clean the house in like 5 minutes. Okay, which my house is, it's usually tidy all the time. But I know, you have that emotional part of you. And then there's the spiritual part. And I think today's society, most people, they say that they have yoga and they have Zen and they have all these, but spirituality is way bigger than that. I think spirituality is the unknown. And God's been around before any of this earth was, before the earth was created, before any human beings. He's been around. And I think a lot of people lack spirituality, that something's greater than us. There's something bigger than us. There's something, and a lot of people don't believe that. They say, Once we leave this earth, we're gone. We're like, in the ground. And so when you don't have that, I think everything else falls apart. But if you have that spirituality, and don't get me wrong, there's a lot of spiritual people that are struggling. And because sometimes we have to struggle to get to where God wants us to be, because if everything was just given to us, like I sometimes pray and I go, oh my God, Jesus, I need your help. Jesus, I need your help. And it's like, all of a sudden I feel calmer and God gives me that peacefulness because he knows I had enough. He's like, oh my God, she had enough. I'm going to let her have some peace today. But that's the way I deal with it. I deal with it as soon as something goes chaotic in my life or I need help with something, I reach out to God. But in my book also, I talk about how much I hated God at one time. And I'm ashamed to say it, but I did, because I felt I was being punished. I was like, I was like God's number one, fan, and I did everything properly. I went to church. I prayed. I said the rosary. And how could God punish me? But I realized it's not God punishing me. It's just what I had to go through to get to where I am. We have to go carry that cross. And then when I was at that worst part of my life, I went and I talked to his mother, the Blessed Mother. That's why the rosary is so important to me. And she, at one point, of course she wasn't talking to me, but it was like she made me think what I was saying. And she said, do you realize what I went through? I buried my son, and he had the most horrific death anyone could ever have. And how dare you say you hate my son? And then at that point, I realized that there's people that are struggling with so much greater problems, that have so many other, worse than what I went through. And I finished the book. I finished the book because I dedicated it to the Blessed Mother because she saved me. She made me see things in a different way than I was. I had a pity party for myself. I was like, oh, poor me, poor me, poor me. Well, you know what? So many other people are like, look at North Carolina. I watched the news and those poor people are living in tents. They still didn't get help. And I was like, oh my God, I got a nice warm house. I got a nice car. I got, plenty of food. And here's these people living in tents and it's getting cold.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them didn't even have water to drink. So I look at things in such a different way now, than how I did when I felt I was in that pity party, And every once in a while, I still go into that pity party. Poor me, poor me. But I get out of it much quicker, than I did in the past.
So in the intro of the book, he says, it's been 4 months now since the coronavirus or COVID-19 stopped our normal way of life. Do you believe that was a way that God tried to wake us up to get closer to him? Because so much happened throughout the year. And I believe that God doesn't do things on purpose, but he tries to send a message so we could get closer to him because the world, society was drifting apart from him.
Yeah, I don't think he caused the coronavirus.
I don't think so either.
No, I don't think he caused it. I think it was people because he gives us free will. But also, since it did change the world, not only the US, but the world, because, it affected so many people. And I was one of the very first to get the coronavirus. I went to London to visit my son. I was sitting by, I don't know if they were Muslim, but they had the I don't know what it's called.
Yeah.
They were all around me. I was sitting all around these men, and they were coughing. Like the cough was like unbearable, to the point where this one girl that was sitting behind me, she was surrounded by them also, and she had to be moved. I didn't move. I stayed there. But I remember I came home and I had this horrific cough. Like I never experienced, and I was so tired that I fell asleep. I went to work every day, but I was so tired and I had this bad cough that my boss gave me a heater, and nobody would come into my office. They just left their reports and everything like on this little credenza that I had outside my office. And I just couldn't believe how tired, and this lasted almost 3 weeks to a month. And I didn't think anything of it. I just thought I had a bad cough. But then a month later, all of a sudden the coronavirus came out. And then a month after that, this was January, all of January, I was sick. February, there was, coronavirus was, being talked about. And March, they shut down our country. And I remember it was like our office was shut down. The entire country was shut down.
Yeah, sporting events canceled, concerts canceled.
Yes, everything was canceled. And even you couldn't go to a supermarket without wearing masks, and and the whole country changed. I'm like, I never experienced anything like this in my life. Like, it was a changing point. And I don't think God had anything to do with it. I think it was people that created this. I believe it was at the Wuhan lab in China, and it was an experiment. And, I think the experiment went wrong.
Yeah.
And people all of a sudden mysteriously disappeared who were part of that experiment. Because I read up on the, few scientists that all of a sudden disappeared. And I knew it was a big thing going on. But I believe that it wasn't God's plan. It wasn't God's plan. I believe it was, God was there for us, but he's saying, you could destroy yourself. I don't have to do anything. You know how in the Bible it says God's going to come back and he's going to lift up all the
end times.
Yes. And then the other people are just going to, perish. So I believe God was giving us, I think he was looking down on us and laughing. And he's saying, you could destroy yourselves. Look what you're doing to yourselves. I gave you free will, and you're destroying yourselves. You want to destroy humanity? And I think people started going back to God. They were, even though the churches were closed, but I think more people were listening to mass on their phones. And I think the spiritual people became more spiritual. But the people that weren't spiritual became more chaotic, more about them, more selfish, more, I want to do this to my body. I want it, like with the transgender and the children being, like I never experienced little children wanting to change their body parts, and I think that some people that were so spiritual were turning more to that spirituality, and the people that weren't spiritual even became more into themselves, into some even Satanism, and they believe like Satan had the answer, and they're into all these like, well, you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I know what you're trying to.
Yeah, so it was divided, and our country was so divided to the point where the things that were going on in politics, I've never experienced anything like that ever. They were trying to change our country. And I think people woke up and they said, you're not taking our country away from us. You're not going to because there was so much evil, I think. It was like people don't want to talk about evil. Somebody said to me, oh, evil, that's such a hard word. It's such a bad word. And I'm like, well, if you say the Our Father, if you know the Our Father, it's the Our Father is a prayer for everyone, basically. Deliver us from evil. That's in the Our Father.
Mm-hmm.
Deliver us from evil. There is evil. And some people is like, there's no evil. Everything's good. Joy, joy, joy. The other party was joy, joy, joy. Where's the joy? There was no joy.
No.
There was like, they were bringing out, and they separated our country to the point where families don't talk to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, when did politics have such a, powerful message to destroy families, to destroy, people were being fired if you were voting for once you lost your job.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when did politics become so strong? And it wasn't about politics, it was about evil. They were bringing evil into our country. And I think people finally said, enough. We don't want this in our country. We want, in God we trust. And no matter what politics you believe in, that has nothing to do with who we are. We shouldn't hate each other over politics. But that's what the other side was doing. And they put everything, they turned it around. When you twist everything,
Yeah.
you twist everything around to make it look like you're the bad one. You're the one that doesn't know what you're saying. You're following Trump. He's so evil. And you know what? I said to myself, wait a minute. I followed Trump since the 80s. Like, Barbara Walters, everybody wanted to interview him. He was like he built New York.
Yeah.
Like, he did so much for our country, and now he's the bad. And you know what? We're not perfect. So he was married 3 times. You know what? Marriages fail. He might have been working so much that he, because that happens. But as far as him being a good person, I never seen him as a Hitler, a Mussolini.
I haven't. I don't know where they get that from.
But that's what they wanted us. But you know what? Like, now everybody wants to be in his circle. What happened to the Hitler, the Mussolini? If you're that such a bad person, right? So
Yeah, imagine being Hitler. You invite him to the White House. You take a
Right.
photo with him.
Exactly. Would you invite someone like that? But they wanted to brainwash American people, brainwash us and say, look, this is because they wanted their agenda. They wanted what they were promoting, which was evil. They were promoting evil.
And it's all to distract us from God and
Yes,
what he wants.
exactly.
Everything is to distract us from God.
It's a distraction. It's a distraction. But the American people, they're pretty smart, aren't they? They say, you're not going to distract us. And now they're distracting us with these drones. I don't know what that's all about, but it's definitely some kind of distraction. So we have to, don't let all these evil distractions come into our world, our life, because that's what's going to destroy not only our country, it'll destroy our families,
Our faith.
And but it's really, really important, especially today, to go back to God. Go back to spirituality, because that's what makes us whole. We can't just take our exercise and yes, mental illness with prescription drugs. Everything's like, just take this pill. Well, maybe if we meditated more, and let's say the rosary or whatever meditation, I'm not saying that worked for me, that maybe we wouldn't need all this medication. And I'm not against medication, because I do believe some people do need medication. Medication is, God gave us medication too. He showed us how, to help ourselves. So I'm not saying whatever works, if you need that, of course, exercise, medication if you need it. If you're stressed out, take a walk. And then spirituality. That makes us balanced. When we're balanced human beings, we will see things in a better way. We won't judge people. We'll have empathy. We'll have compassion for others. And then we'll be able to listen to others and say, you know what? They might have a point there. But when we are not balanced and we just see one way, we're never gonna get along. It's always gonna be, well, it's my way. This is how I think. You got to think the same way. And that's what that party was telling us to do. If you don't believe the way you're a Hitler, you're in a cult, you're
Fascist.
you're fascist. Yes. If you don't believe the way we think, you're not in our little group. We don't want you. And you're garbage. And in the end, our own president said, if we weren't on his side, we're garbage. How could half the country be garbage? Right?
It makes no sense. So right here it says, and on page 124, God does not want us to be alone or lonely for that matter. He wants us surrounded by family and friends and loved ones. Jesus himself had the 12 disciples, his groupie followers, as I would like to call it. They had dinners together, they traveled together, and they attended weddings and celebrations together. They were always there for each other, but there was one out of the group, Judas, who betrayed Jesus. There is always that one or a few of those so-called friends that are only there when life is going well. So I feel like that's how the world is today. You could be a good person, but if you're outspoken in your faith, people may not like it and they'll cut you out of their life. They'll consider you Judas because you're not following the status quo. Right. You could be outspoken politically. Yeah. If you disagree with it, people may throw you out of their life, as we've seen. So how can we get back to having civil conversations?
Okay, I look at it in a different way. If you tried everything, you have to be yourself first. And if you're yourself, people will accept you for who you are. Right? But if they don't accept you, then you have to move on and say, that where Jesus said, go to each door, and if they don't knock on a door, and if they don't let you in, move on.
Yeah.
You got to move on. And then what I kind of am going to reverse it in a way where I found people when I was in my darkest moments, all of a sudden they didn't accept me. And then I realized they were toxic. You don't want toxic people in your life, because sometimes you have to let go of those toxic people, because you don't grow with toxic people. Toxic people try to destroy you. And most of the time, toxic people, there's an agenda. It's jealousy. Jealousy is one of the most, I can't even describe you. It's something that people don't talk about. It's jealousy, envy, and you can't change that. So what I felt, I had to let go of the Judases in my life. Do you see? I'm seeing it in a different way.
Yeah, you're seeing it in more of a biblical way.
Right. Where Judas betrayed Jesus. Jesus forgave him, but he surrounded himself, his other 12 disciples, he surrounded himself with good people. And what I was trying to say is, you will have those Judases that will betray you, and they're toxic, and they're going to drag you down with them. You can't let that happen to you, because the longer you hold on to those toxic people, the more you're not going to be growing with what God wants you to grow and experience. And then God puts people into your life that are healthy for you. They're healthy people that will help you to grow and be more spiritual. And toxic people, you're never going to change them.
No, they're not.
You can't change them. So you got, don't wish them well, don't wish them any harm. Don't wish them, I'm going to get back at this one, or no, let them go. Pray for them, let them go, and God will take care of those toxic people. But you shouldn't surround yourself by toxic people. You should look at yourself. I'm important too, and I'm not going to let this person hurt me again. I'm not going to let this person say those horrible things about me. I'm not going to let that person, like talk behind my back, or let that person go, toxic to you. But don't wish them any harm, and let God brings in new people into your life that will help you to grow and be a better person and get you to that place of serenity and peacefulness, and you'll be, just wish kindness towards everybody. And that's what we're lacking today. We're lacking that. If someone does, I wish they got run over by a truck, or it's like, that's not.
Yeah,
the way
that's
to
how
go.
people are today. That's not
Yeah.
that's not the right thing to do.
It's not the right thing to do.
So before we wrap up, in the title it says Jesus isn't going to change you unless you want to change. And based on the conversation we had today, it seems like even though there's evil in the world, we can't expect Jesus to take it away right away. It starts with the people in the world. It starts with us. The only way evil is going to leave this world is if we decide to take it out. We could pray to God for it to leave. We could have a relationship with him. We could do good in the world. But it takes a team to do. It takes a team. I don't know how to word it. It takes all of us
Yeah.
to be good people if we want to see evil leave.
Yeah. That's where in the beginning I said we have to help each other. And, that's the only way we're going to change things, and be there for each other. We can change things in numbers. And I think we're doing that. I think there's almost like a revolution that happened with, this election, like in a good way. I'm saying it in a good way, and people are turning back to God. And I noticed, I tried to watch both sides of the, President Trump and President Biden. I never seen President Biden being prayed over, or Kamala Harris. But President Trump, and I went to one of his rallies. Almost all his rallies, they pray over him.
Yeah, they do.
And
It's a good thing.
he's like, oh my God. They would ask him, can we pray over you? He goes, yeah. And he accepted. He knows he can't do anything alone. We need God's grace to change things. Only God's grace could change things, because without God's grace, the evil's going to come in. Evil's going to take over. And we don't want that to happen to our families, our friends, our country, or this world.
And people say not to get political, whether you're talking sports or whatever you're talking about. But it seems like we have to sometimes.
Yeah.
Because you think about how, like, they're doing all this, they're doing evil things, whether it's in school, the world, the way they look at people, the way they treat people. And I think people had enough of it, and that's why they voted the way they did.
Yeah.
So we have to find a way for good to trump evil. Hey,
I like that, Trump evil.
That's
That's a good one.
that,
I
but
like
that sounds good.
Yeah.
And I think it starts with having a relationship with God, but it also starts with us spreading that message, spreading what we believe is right. whether people want to hear the truth or not. And I think that's how the world can change. But like you say right here, Jesus isn't going to change you unless you want to change. So if you want to see good things happen in the world, then I think we have to go out and do good things, whether it's, going to food banks, being there for people, helping the homeless in some way. It's not going to start with the politician. It's not going to start by saying, hey, God, do this right now. It starts with God giving us the resources to understand what we may have to go through to get there. But it's also if we're willing to be that change in order for him to change us.
Yeah, exactly. And I just want to mention one thing. The reason politics in the last, I believe, 10 years, like changed people's lives. It never did. Like growing up, politics, whoever was president was Democrat, Republican.
Yeah.
It was our president. Everybody accepted, in the last 10 years, it was like, I remember I worked at a CPA firm and I used to go to lunch with, a half a dozen people in my department. And, Hillary was one of the women running for president, and they said, you're voting for her. And I go, well, I don't know. I got to, and then the partner in the firm said, do not tell them who you're voting for. And I'll go, why not? Like, what does it matter? Like, they're still going to be my friends. He's like, trust me, do not say who you're voting for. I was the minority. Everybody else in my department voted Democratic. And I told them, I can't vote Democratic. I'm not. One thing that I really, I have to vote against is abortion, so that's one thing, but there's a lot of other things.
Yeah, there's more to it. People think
Right.
it's a one issue thing.
It's not just one. I'm more conservative, but after I told them who I'm not going to vote Democratic, they completely shunned me, ignored me, never asked me to go out to lunch again. I was like, to the point where I was so upset going to work that the partner firm moved me to a different department because they were so mean to me. They were so mean to me that I couldn't even do my job. And I said, it's politics. How could this be happening? It's, and that's where politics, you have to talk about it now, because politics isn't just about politics. It's about everyday life. It's affected so many people by, and it's my way or
The highway.
the highway.
And you go in depth in this book. You talk about acceptance. You talk about how our own president is a Catholic, yet he is the farthest example from actually behaving as a Catholic.
Yeah.
So I think everyone should check out this book.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much.
It's called For God's Sake, Put on a Clean Shirt. Jesus isn't going to change you unless you want to change.
Yeah. Do you want to know why I named it that title?
Yeah.
Okay. It was during COVID. I would go to the park walking with my sister, and I was like so depressed, very depressed. I wasn't working anymore because all the places were closed down, and she called me in the morning, and she still was working. She's a nurse, so she had no choice but to work. And I used to sleep in t-shirts and just shorts, and I would get up in the morning. That's what I would wear,
Yeah.
And I had made myself a piece of toast with jelly, grape jelly, and the grape stain went all over my white t-shirt. And I was like, I looked in the mirror, and I wasn't even going to change my shirt. I was going to go out like the sun, go, who's going to see me, And I looked in the mirror. I said, oh, for God's sakes, at least change your shirt. So that's where the title came from.
Nice. But yeah, I'm looking forward to reading the rest of this book.
I
And
hope you enjoy it. I really do. I hope you get something out of it. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk to
this
you.
platform, hopefully more people buy it.
Yeah, that would be nice. I didn't write it for sales, but I just want to spread the word. But,
Yeah. You go in depth. You say things that people may not want to hear,
Yeah.
but they have to hear it.
Yeah. They don't have to. It's if they want to. Some people might not want to hear it, but it's my own personal views, and and there might be some others that have the same views, and there might be some people that it might change their views. So, and I believe in miracles, and I believe that God gives us a free will, and as we choose whatever we want in our life, and we're all going to die. So that's why I have the coffin on the front of the book. We're all going to die.
And it's just how.
Yeah.
Someone told me it's not how long you live, but it's how you live, and that really sticks out to me.
Yeah.
All right, thank you for coming on, and look forward to reading the rest of the book.
Thank you so much.
Anytime.
Thank you.
So Malibu at the diner part of the casino.
That they're gonna slip back a little bit. Ben,
Do you ever ask yourself the question as to
For this town, things that haven't been done before.
I feel like
It's more than just Joe Biden, though. Like, it's just like people, even people.
Overpay for DeGrom, and
So I think this is a great way for us to gather some
I'll be looking for another job after this is over, I can tell you that.
I'm here with your name behind it, hoping that. Why didn't Trump fire Fauci? He could have gotten rid of him.
There's a lot of things you can have checked out. So
talk whatever we want.
it's sports. Well, I'll tell you, no matter, I don't have to worry about my feelings to understand that.